Hiya, it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today we're doing something a little different, something new to me and something new to this channel. I had two people talk to me about parchment crafts, but and vellum in different contexts, so I decided to do some videos on this. So the first one I'm doing here is more the parchment side, and I'm going to be using the Charity Stamps Groovi plates because I'm not a parchment crafter, so we're going to be doing that. But I'm also putting together a video of things that you can do using vellums and parchment and stuff on your cards. But as I say, today we are doing sort of more traditional parchment. As I said, I'm a complete beginner to parchment crafts, and this Groovi plates were shown to me and I thought they looked really fun. I've seen them before years ago and I never really got into it. I never sort of bought into it or anything like that. Now, the first thing you'll notice is I'm pointing out to you that what you have to look for is that the word Groovi is the word that you can read. The rest of it, ignore it, that it's back to front, because what you're working on is the back of your parchment. So you're going to take the plate mate, I think they call it, and then you're going to put your other piece in the middle, so you can get lots of these different designs, squares that go in the center of that, and you pop that in. Then you tape your piece of parchment over the top and you use your parchment craft tool, now your embossing tool rather, I should say. Now, I definitely know that I needed something to go over the top of it to make it slide better when I was working, because it didn't really go so smoothly. It was fine, it worked fine, it didn't scratch anything, but it definitely needed something over it. Now, I knew I was going to colour, so I didn't want to like wipe it with some sort of oil or anything, like lightly over the top. I know that they suggest tumble dryer sheets. Personally, can't stand the smell, so not really what I wanted to do. The other thing is, I'm just starting out with this. I didn't know if I was going to like it, so I wanted to really keep it very basic, just a couple of pieces. So I literally got this mate thing. I had a Christmas plate to go in the center, and also this hydrangea, and one set of parchment pack and one set of the tools, which actually I had already. So it really was just keeping it really basic, so it wasn't an expensive investment or anything like that. Now, the beauty of this is that you can't really go wrong, because even if you go outside the lines, inverted commas, it won't stretch the parchment, so you can literally scratch over any part of it, and unless it's got the groove, you won't make a mark. So what I would say is that for me, and I don't have problems with my hands, I found that it made my hands hurt quite a lot. Now, I did all of this one, and it's not a huge plate, but there's a little bit of detail on it, but I did this whole one in one sitting, and my hand was really hurting afterwards. Now, I know you can get different tools or different accessories to go around the tools to make it a little easier, more comfortable to work on the tools. So you can see here I've completed all of that part, and I've now got the little corner flowery part. Now I'm just taking a look at it, and that's the other thing. As long as it's stuck down, when you put it back again, it's going to be in the right place. As long as you don't unstick it, you'll be fine. And now I'm getting onto the floral part, but as I say, my hand definitely really hurt, and that partly, I suspect, is that I didn't have something to make it more smooth to roll over the parchment, so I was having to work that little bit harder on making it sort of the tool go through sort of onto the parchment and stretch it. I don't really know the terms. As I said to you guys, I'm as much a beginner at this as you guys are, so I think that didn't help. I still think that my hands would hurt afterwards. Maybe I needed to put less pressure and do more goes over the parchment at a lighter rate. I still again think that it would make my hands hurt because you're still having to go over it several times. I kind of was like pressing a little harder and getting it done in 1 or 2 strokes. And as I said, perhaps I should have done, 4 or 5 little slightly lighter strokes, and that would have been easier. I think it sort of feels you naturally go more hard, and that was really bad English, but you naturally go harder, and I guess it probably would have helped a little, but I still think having done this all in one go, it definitely made my hands hurt. And I'm going to be doing some colouring on the flowers, which I'll show you how that is done. Well, how I did it. That doesn't mean it's correct. As I said, I'm making this up as I go along as well. This was literally a friend who was just showing me very briefly about this, and it was sort of almost like 5 minutes, sort of get the idea of it, and hoping that I could work the rest out myself, which I think I did all right. It turned out good, in my opinion. But as I say, I definitely think like those little dots there that I just went round, it was much more fiddly and difficult to work with, and I was using the smaller end so that I got, you can change which end you do. If you do a slightly thicker ball tool, you get a slightly softer line. I wanted a much crisper line, so I went for the smaller end, and that gives you a thinner, crisper line. And also there was a lot of detail in this, and so I felt that it would work better to have that thin line. So I'm going to finish off this bit. You can kind of get the idea of how it works, and then I will show you it when it's all finished. And here it is done. So we'll just pop this up and show you it the right way round, and you can see it looks so pretty, really effective. I think it's definitely worth the effort. So the next thing I wanted to do was add a sentiment. So we took this plate mate, made sure it's the correct way round, again just using the word Groovi as well indicator, and then this sentiment plate. So I think that's where it is really important, is that you can see it's natural to want to put the sentiments so you can read them. So make sure that it's the Groovi word that you can read, not the sentiments. So I'm going to be using the happy birthday. So what you need to do is obviously position the parchment in the right place so that the birthday and the happy are where you want it to be. Now in my case, I wanted to separate the two words. I wanted them one above each other, so that's why I've sort of done it. It looks like it wouldn't fit, but it's deliberate. So I started with the longer word because that was going to be more difficult to fit in, and I needed to position that perfectly. And then I've just again going round, and I think even more here I really noticed that I definitely needed something to help make the tool glide across the surface of the parchment a little better. It came out fine, but as I said before, I'm really not into the tumble dryer sheet thing. So if you guys know of any other thing that would work, that would also allow me then to colour on the back, which I can imagine oil would be a problem, but maybe you guys know different. If you've been doing this a while, you might have more information on it than I do even. But we're kind of learning this together for those of us who haven't done it before. So then I just repositioned the parchment to the happy part of the happy birthday, and just again using the thin end of my tool there so that it just creates a really sharp, very white marking into the parchment, and there it is done. And I think the whole thing looks really, really pretty, and I really like the way the happy birthday kind of pops out. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the colouring. Now again, with the colouring, you're working on the back. So what I learned, sort of just because I did a little bit of practice on a spare sheet, was that obviously like your embossing that you're doing, everything is in reverse. So what you're seeing as you colour isn't necessarily what's going to be seen on the other side. One, obviously, is going to be a lot softer because it's going through the parchment. But secondly, the first colour that you put down is the colour that you're going to see the most of. So in this instance, what you're doing is you're putting down the darker colour, then you're putting a lighter colour on top. So it looks like there's not a lot of dark colour, but actually the dark colour is underneath that light colour a little bit. So you're actually going to be seeing a bit more of that. So just be aware, I hope that makes sense, that basically you kind of need to remember that you're working in reverse. So the colour that you put down first is the colour that you're going to see the most of. So just be aware. Now it will blend to a certain extent as it does on normal paper. However, you just still get that slight effect where the first colour is a little bit more prominent, and then the second colour, and then the third colour is the, or whatever, the last colour is the least amount that you will see. So we're starting out with the leaves, and this is where I hadn't really twigged this part that I've just discussed, and I added a little bit more dark, and it really didn't make a lot of difference. It did a little, because obviously I'm going over the area where it was already dark, so I'm just darkening some of that area, but I was trying to drag some of the dark out a little bit further, and that really wasn't going to happen that much. You can see here it's you can still see the dark, but it's not as good. Now you compare it when I do these leaves, where I'd realised that this was what happened, and when I turn it over, you'll see I'm just getting rid of the excess bits of pencil there, but you can see, look, the second set of leaves are darker in that center area, and that's just where I'd worked out, you know, that's how it worked, and so I was a little bit more generous with the colour in that centerpiece, because I wanted it to show. Now the next thing I did was all these little dots, not too difficult to do, just dotted them in, and then I also did the same on the centre of the flowers, but using white. Ideally I think you'd probably use a parchment tool for anything like the white, but I didn't have necessarily the right tools for that at this point in time, so I thought it best just to use a white pencil. Now, after I did that, I started on the flowers. Now, with the hydrangeas, in my mind's eye at least, I always see hydrangeas as having slightly two different shades of flowers within the bundle, and some are slightly pinkier and some are slightly more lilac and less pink in them. So I wanted to do that little mixture, just adding that bit of pink, and so I took advantage of the fact that when you do that layering, that kind of doesn't completely show through. So I put a small amount of pink, and it looks like I've put loads on, but of course only a little bit is going over the end of where the purple is, and I've sort of feathered the edge of the purple so it kind of blends through. So there's actually very little pink coming through, and I just try to really kind of just make it have a tone of pink on the other side, and then I just finished off as I did before with the white, and that just, I think, adds and blends those colours in nicely together just at the end there. And then I did the second flower, and I'm going to do that using just the same colours, but I'm going to deduct the purple out of the bundle. So I'm still doing this one flower just so that you can see it, but I'm going to do one of each, two of each, and then I will finish it, but and show you the completed thing. I'm not going to show you the whole thing coloured, because that will be just very boring, I think, to see the same thing over and over again. So now we're going to do the purple flower. So as I said, we did this without the pink in, so the same colours but just dropping that pink out. So just starting with the purple in the centre there, trying to take into account the shape of the flowers, petals rather, and where they might be slightly darker, where it might be slightly paler, but not really being too fussy about it, because it's not going to show terribly on the other side. Now you do obviously have to worry about going outside the lines on here, because the colour would show. However, I did discover it does erase quite well, but don't forget, if you go over the line in so far as you're literally colouring onto the line, that doesn't matter. So like where those white lines are in the centre of the petal, it doesn't matter if you colour over them, because that won't show. The white is there, it's in front of the colour, so it won't affect that. It's only if you go actually beyond those lines that you will obviously see the colour. So you can see here that that's slightly more purple, and when you turn it over you can see it's got a little less pink in it than the other flower. So now we're just moving on to the second flower of each colour, just to demo to you guys. But I always find once I've done the first whatever in when I'm colouring, if it's like you've got repeats of it, I always find that then the next ones are much easier to do, because you've kind of got in a rhythm, you've understood how you want it to be coloured, etc. So this is our next purple flower. It looks like that's quite a pink colour that's there, but it actually, I'm putting very little of that so that it doesn't show through very much. It's just like a little amount of it, and then I've just added a little bit more purple there because it was a bit of a dark petal where it was sort of tucked behind, so I felt like it needed to be a bit darker. So it's very little of that colour, but it's just less pink than the pink that I use, but it's still within the right tones, and it still complements, so it still looks like it's from the same flower, and it's just different sort of little petals within that. Well, I suppose hydrangeas are made of little flowers, and so you're kind of colouring those little individual flowers, and each one is slightly different shaded, and that's what I was trying to achieve here. So as I say, this is my purple one, and I'm just going around now with the white, and you can see it was a lot quicker this time and a lot easier to do because I'd sort of, as I said, got the rhythm of it. And then we're going to go across and do my final pink one. Now what I did after I sort of cut through with just demonstrating these to you was I went round and I did all of my pink flowers because I wanted those in a certain spot, because I didn't want a ton of those. I just wanted them at key points just to give a little highlight, a little difference, a little contrast in the flower itself. So I went round and positioned those first, and then I went back and did the rest with the purple sort of set of colours. So as you can see here, we're going back into the pink, and you can see that's a lot stronger pink than the other sort of pinky purple. The other one actually looks a lot more pinky on the screen than it is in life. It's actually a lot more purpley when you see it, but you can see this one here is the one I'm talking about. When you compare it to the pink next to each other like this, it looks a lot more purpley, but when you had it on its own it looked really pinky, but it actually isn't. It's like a really lovely lavender. Anyway, so again, I don't put a ton of that bright pink, and then we put a little bit of this sort of lavendery pinky colour in, and then I'm going to follow that with my white, which also helps just blend that last end part in. I always find white really helps blend stuff in, and also you've got the lines there, so if you do go off the edges a little bit on the edges of the petals, it's not the end of the world, because it will kind of look like it's part of the embossing rather than anything that you've done wrong. So it's just a case of gently working your way through each colour. I'm working on this black rubber mat just to be sure that nothing pierces through, and it's just keeping it nice and soft. It's going to be, don't forget, a lot lighter on the other side, so don't worry if it looks quite bright. Also, of course, again reminding you that it's going to be certain colours are going to look more prominent than they are on the other side. Now I've did a few more flowers. I think you can see I've done some of the pinky ones that I talked about, how I positioned those, and then I thought, well, some of these I think look more like leaves than petals, so I decided to colour in a few of these bits in green. I thought that would add something nice to it, even if they are actually meant to be buds or petals or something like that. But it doesn't really matter. Do what you think works for you, and also the colours. I mean, it doesn't have to be purples. I mean, I don't know what colours hydrangeas come in, but I just thought lavenders, that just is what came into my mind. So then I just continued working away at these flowers until I got to the end. Again, it's quite hard on the hands, so if you do have problems with your hands, I would either consider maybe this isn't the particular sort of crafting for you, the style, or maybe just, if they're sort of not terrible, maybe just sort of breaking up the time that you do it. So as I said earlier, I ended up doing all the embossing in one go, but I also did the same with the colouring. So I did the colouring and the embossing at separate times, but it would have probably been better to again break that up perhaps into a couple of different time sessions. Now here I did the white using a pencil. Now probably you would use normally an embossing tool to achieve that result, but I didn't have it, so there we go. And then I went around the edges with a bit of purple just to make a bit of interest there, and there it is done, and I think it looks really pretty. I hope you agree. So now we're going to get on to making the card. Now for me, I like when I'm attaching vellum to a piece of card with brads, I like to not cut either to the correct size, because I tend to find that you end up stretching it and you end up, it's not always quite how you think, because vellum kind of distorts slightly. So I like to sort of do it first and then cut to size. Now that does make it a little bit more problematic if you are trying to cut it using a guillotine or something, because you've got the brads in the way. So you just have to be cautious, or just use a craft knife later. So as you can see, hopefully you can see anyway, I've got these lovely purpley sparkly brads, and then I'm just using my guillotine very carefully to cut that down to size. I'm putting all the sizes etc. for you on the screen. Now at the beginning I'd actually picked out this patterned paper, and from that I collected from my stash the purple stroke lavender cardstock that went behind my vellum piece there. So then I cut that pattern paper to be 1/4 inch down, so 6 3/4 for my 7x7 pre-scored card base that I had. I believe this was a hunky-dory one, but I couldn't swear to it, so I haven't actually put that up on the screen, but I'm pretty sure it's a hunky-dory card base. But in any event, you can get the 7x7 anywhere, and it comes with envelopes as well, which is handy. So I did the pattern cardstock onto the background base card, and when I put the vellum on, I felt like it was sort of disappearing into the pattern. It was all a little bit wishy-washy, so I felt it needed just a little bit more of that purple card base just as a border around the actual vellum piece. So I just added that in, cut that to the size as I put on the screen just a few moments ago, and I felt that that just added a bit more to it. And then again, in order just to help it pop off from the background, I felt that it would work better, and also it does make it easier when you've got brads to actually put some 3D foam on the back. It pops it off physically, and therefore it gives that visual look of it popping off the page as well. So it just helps make the vellum piece not disappear into the background. And as I said, it also helps with the brads, because obviously the brads have a back to them, and if you try and stick them down flat, it is a bit of a pain to do. Then I just thought, well, I want to do something to the inside. The outside is very decorative, and I literally just grabbed some scraps and thought, well, that will work okay, fine. It's a bit different to what's on the outside, same colours, same patterns, but it's just a little bit of a different look. So I did that, and then I found this beautiful American Crafts organza ribbon, and I popped that round the top there. So then I just did a single knot, create my 2 bunny ears as it were, cross them over, pop one through the little hole that you've created, and then pull. The reason I do it this way is then I can hold the knot. As you can see, I'm holding the knot and then pull onto the little strings, and it just makes it a lot easier to pull those through without them getting too tangled if you hold the knot. And then it will loosen very slightly. By holding the knot, it does help that, but it will loosen a bit, so then you have to tighten it. Especially with the organza, it does tend to slide a little bit more, so just keep working at it until you get it to the size loops that you want, and the kind of position of the angles of the loops that you want, and then just cut your tails afterwards, because what you'll find is you keep pulling it, and that's why there was such long tails, especially with organza. You can get it kind of shredding. And that was it. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to add any sparkle to the card or anything like that, other than the little brads that had a bit of sparkle to it. I felt that that would take away from the delicate nature of the kind of vellum and the colouring on that. So I hope you've enjoyed my first attempt at this kind of style of card, and as I said, if you can give me some advice on what I could use to help make my tool slide over the back of the vellum a lot easier, that would be great. But I hope that if you've not done this before, that you found this helpful and that you were able to learn along a little bit with me as well. So thank you so much for watching. Do make sure you hop on over to the blog post, and of course I would love it if you haven't subscribed already, and most of you haven't, I can see it. So if you haven't subscribed already, please please do subscribe. It really, really helps me with YouTube. And even more important than that is if you've enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up, because I would love to see it. And again, it helps me with YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Bye.